This is James here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting March the 23rd, 2020. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for this week's video reading. I am so happy to have you here. If this is your first time here, I'd like to say welcome, and if you're returning, I'd like to say welcome back. Well, this week I wanted to work with Kipper in light of the fact that I worked with Lenormand last week. So I just want to touch on a point that came up for me over the course of the week with that particular reading. So of course, we are all experiencing the impact and effects of the coronavirus situation that we are all collectively experiencing. And in my neck of the woods, and I'm using neck of the woods because it's a reference to Garden, one of the cards in last week's reading. So what has happened in my neck of the woods is that a lot of the restaurants in the area were all asked to, actually mandated by our governor in the state that I'm in, to close down, meaning that there would be no dine-in experiences taking place in restaurants, more of a drive-through or takeout experience, right? And so if you watched last week's reading, you will remember that Garden, which is the card that talks about social activity, but in this particular context, public spaces and social gathering places. And what do we do when we go out to eat? We go out collectively to gather together and to have social experiences, right? And so Mountain was the card that came after that in that line. And so Mountain is a card about setbacks, it's about delays, it's about things being postponed. So if we pair those, that is reflective of what I experienced in my area, like I said, with the restaurants all being forced in a way. Probably that's the right word to use, forced to close down, right? So I just wanted to share that because I think sometimes it's important to kind of go over readings to share, at least from my personal perspective, because I'm in the collective experience, right? I'm the reader, but I also like to share how those particular readings affected or impacted me or in my community. So I just wanted to share that. So in light of last week's reading with Lenormand, I wanted to see what the Kipper might have to say. And the reason why I'm using those specifically is they tend to me, for me anyway, to be more practical, more grounded. They speak more about everyday experiences, where tarot can be, it can go one or two ways. You can use it in the same way as Lenormand and Kipper, but I tend to like to go bigger picture with tarot. I tend to like to go deeper with tarot because of my psychology background, so I'm always looking for underlying influences or root causations or ways that we can change our perspective or change our thinking about the situation using tarot. I think tarot is great for all of that. But what I really love about Lenormand and Kipper is the practicality and how they speak about everyday occurrences and everyday events. So with that in mind, I'm using one of my favorite Kipper decks. I almost said my favorite, but I have a few. One of my favorite Kipper decks, and that is the Roaring Twenties Kipper. It is by Lynn Boyle, and as always, I'm going to be leaving information about the deck in the description box below so you can learn more about it. So now that I've set things up, let's get to the table and take a closer look at what the Kipper wants to share with us about the week ahead. And here we are with the cards on the table, and I'm going to take a few moments to shuffle the deck. And just as I do every week, I'm focusing on my intention for these weekly general readings. And that is asking the cards for the information, for the insight, for the guidance and advice to come through. That's going to be most helpful and beneficial as we move through this upcoming week. I'm feeling that's good. I'm going to go ahead now and cut the deck. Now I'm going to fan the cards out. and I'm going to be working with a line of 5, so I'm looking for 5 cards in the fan that are getting my attention. Alright, those are the 5 cards. I'm going to remove the remainder. I'm just going to put that to one side. Now I'm going to count back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's just my little check to make sure that my counting is right. And now I'm going to take a moment to lay the cards out. And when I work with a line of 5, the cards get read from left to right, so that's the direction of the line. And when I work with Kipper, I tend to read Kipper like a storyline. So the storyline moves from left to right, so I don't deal with the center card until I get to it. Unlike when I work with Lenormand, I usually start with the middle card. So let's see what story is unfolding in the Kipper for the week ahead, starting with the card opening the line up. We have the gift card. Okay, so for me, the gift card is a card that can talk about an actual gift, because some of the cards can be read, quite literally. So this could be talking about a gift, but when I see this card, I usually tend to think of it as an offer that's being presented to us. So there's going to be something about an offer being presented, right? And it may seem like a gift, right? It can also be this idea about playing on the idea that a gift can be about a present, right? So it may be something that's going on in the present moment. I'm playing on the word present. Or something that requires us to be present, right? It's about our actual presence, right? The other thing about the gift is that gifts are exchanged usually during times of celebration. So this card can represent parties, celebrations, even holidays, any occasion where a gift is being exchanged, right? Now, with a lot of things going on in the world at this current point in time, the gift card may actually be talking about trying to find the gift in the present moment. Like with all the things that are going on, what is it that we could be grateful for? What is the gift in the experience? Those kinds of things. And I'm getting very metaphorical and maybe even a little metaphysical here. But that's what I'm seeing in the gift card. Again, it could represent an actual gift. I tend to read it more as an offer that's being presented for our consideration, right? It can also be celebrating something or some kind of holiday. Again, any occasion where gifts are being exchanged, right? So that is the gift card. So now let's take a look at the card next to it. It might give us more about the opening card. And here we have a long way. Okay. So a long way usually represents something that's a long way off or something that's, down the road a ways. This card is known as a 1 year's patience. So it could be saying that it's going to take some time, right? If I read the two cards together, because the path on a long way comes back to a gift. So if we're going with the idea that this is talking about celebrations, parties, things of that nature, it may suggest that something, whatever's being celebrated, is going to be a long way down the road, or a long time off, or a long time coming, and we have to be patient. Now, if we bring this back to the present situation with the coronavirus, it could just be saying too, like, there's going to be some time down the road before we get to a place where we are actually able to celebrate something, right? So it could also be that there's going to be some kind of gift or an offer being presented, down the road, right? And so that there may be, I'm thinking in the moment, going with what I know about the situation, is that, Congress and the government is working on trying to pass a law that's going to help with financial aid for people who are really being affected by what's going on. And I'm thinking about like people who are maybe out of work, not working, those kinds of things. So that may be an offer being presented down the road, down the way. So that's what I'm seeing with that, right? But even so, a long way usually represents something that is going to require a great deal of patience, right? This is about a long journey, right? So that's what I'm seeing with the two cards. Okay, so now let's move on to the card in the middle of the line this week. Now this is the card for me that I would read as the central issue, or in this particular case, because I read Kipper as a storyline, this is the heart of the story. Okay, so Success in Love is a great card because it usually represents success, right? So here as the focus card, we're being asked to focus on successful outcomes, right? Because that's usually what the card means. It usually represents something successful in terms of an outcome. Now I'm looking at the image on the card, and so sometimes this card can represent relationships, right? So there may be a focus for some people if we don't make it about the larger coronavirus situation taking place, then this could just be about relationships and focusing on successful relationships, right? And this does not necessarily imply just romantic relationships, given with the word love in the card title. It can also represent friendships and platonic relationships, right? It's any relationship in which we're wanting to focus on the success or wanting the relationship itself to be successful, right? So there's that. Now, this card is also about faith and trust, right? So if we go with the idea that the cards are telling a story about an offer being presented down the road that's going to lead to, remember, roads lead somewhere, that's going to lead to a successful outcome. That's how I would read the three cards, right? Now, it could also be an offer being presented down the road in a friendship or a relationship with the intention of creating some form of success. But I'm thinking in terms of our relationships this week, this card is asking us to have faith and trust. And I will say this, it's also about faith and trust in ourselves, right? Now, if I mirror gift and success in love, and I talked about this idea about faith and trust, sometimes I see success in love as intuition. It's an intuition card for me. That's one of the personal meanings that I have for it. If I mirror the two cards, then this is about an intuitive gift or an intuitive ability, right? And somebody in that context, if that resonates, then it's about developing that down the road, or that you're noting your progress, right? This card would suggest in that regard that you've come a long way, right? And so maybe if you're this person that I'm referring to in terms of developing your intuition, then this card here I would offer as advice to you is that to note your progress. You want to note how far you've come and maybe not taking a look at the road ahead, meaning not looking at how far you think you still need to go, right? And maybe that's just a general message, right? If I take the intuitive gift aspect out, then maybe for some of us, we just need to kind of maybe take a moment to look in the rearview mirror of life and noting how far we've come, right? And not look at maybe how far we feel or think we still need to go, right? If we go with the idea that this is, metaphorically speaking, maybe the path in life, right? And going back to this, if I do this, remember I said that the road is leading back to a gift, right? So let's say that this is the past, right? So celebrating the past, right? That would be celebrating achievements, accomplishments, those kinds of things, right? And then we could take these two cards and this, if this is the past, this is about success in the past, right? And remember now, if we're looking at the order of the cards, then we're moving from left to right. So this is about moving towards success, right? And here in the middle, it could just be a matter of just being patient, right? You're going to get to the other side. You're going to get to the end of the journey, right? But if you want it to be successful, you may have to be patient in the moment, right? Patience in the present moment. Okay, so now let's move on to the cards on the other side of the line. And first up, we have older woman. Okay, so this card can represent a couple of things. First and foremost, Kipper has a number of people cards. So the first thing is that older woman can represent an actual woman. And she would be a woman who's older than all of us who are watching this video, right? So she could be an older sister, she could be an older cousin, she could be an aunt, she can be a mother, grandmother. This card would suggest it has to be somebody who's older than us, right? So now, the other meaning of this card for me is that this can also represent somebody who's mature or somebody who has a great deal of experience, right? And so far, since the cards on the table are positive in nature, older woman would be somebody who's helpful to the situation. So now if I pair the two cards, success and love, and older woman, remember, this was about a friendship possibly, right? Or so here we have the possibility of an older woman who wants to help us in terms of being successful, right? So she may be a friend, but her way of helping is to help us achieve success, right? And it could also be if I mirror a long way an older woman, it may be that we are going to benefit from the wisdom of her experience, right? She's come a long way, right? So I'm seeing, like, metaphorically, she's saying, I've been down this road, right? I've been down this road before because it's behind her, right? The cards that are behind her represent her past, right? So this could be an offer being presented, and now that we have a character here, it could be an older woman who is involved to some degree. But again, remember, older woman is not any of us who are watching this video at this time. It's somebody who's older than us. So this could be, again, an older woman who's acquired some wisdom from her experience. And I'm also thinking this could be, somebody who's in a senior position of authority. So if this is a job situation, let's say, offer being presented may be having to do with a job, right, let's say. Then older woman may be somebody who's in a senior position, somebody who's in a position of authority, that kind of thing on the job, right? But her intention is to help you be successful, right? She's wanting to help you achieve a certain outcome, right? Or it could be a situation in which we've come a long way in a relationship with an older woman, right? But the central issue may have been around faith and trust, right? Okay, so now let's move on, because now we have a character and she's looking at this last card, right? So this may be something that pertains to her future or something that she's going to help us with in terms of creating a future outcome. So let's take a look at this card now. Rounding out the line, we have stress and fear. Okay, so now the first thing that I'm looking at, and I notice, is that older woman is looking at stress and fear. So stress and fear is also known as grief and adversity, right? So it could be that an older woman that we are having a relationship with is going to be facing some kind of adversity, right? And that she's going to be stressful and possibly fearful about that. Now remember, this is in the future, right? So if we go with the idea about the coronavirus, that we all know that older people are more susceptible to the virus than younger people, right? So it could just be that there may be some concern, stress and fear, for an older woman that we are having a relationship with, right? Regarding the virus, right? But it could also be that the older woman may be facing some kind of other type of adversity or even stress, right? And maybe we're going to be the ones to offer her the help and support. Now that I'm looking at it, it could go one or two ways. It could be she's going to be helpful, or with success and love, we're going to be in a position to offer this particular woman some help in an effort to minimize her sense of stress and, maybe her facing adverse conditions. So again, but this card at the end of the line is saying it's about, being in a stressful time, stressful moment, facing some kind of adversity. that kind of thing. I'm feeling inclined because I don't want to end the reading on that kind of note. I want to see possibly what additional message Kipper would like to offer in terms of the outcome. So I'm going to take a moment. I don't know if you can see me, but that sound you hear is my shuffling the deck. And so as I'm shuffling, I'm thinking about what more can be said about the potential outcome of stress and fear. And I just realized in the moment that if you heard that beep, that was my phone, which means I did not turn my phone off. So that was just validation for me because it beeped as I asked the question. That is the thing that I should be doing. So again, you probably can't see it, but I am now cutting the cards. You will see this because I'm going to do it above the cards that are on the table. I'm going to fan out the cards. And I'm looking for one that sticks out, and I see it here. So this is the card I've chosen. I'm putting it over stress and fear because I'm asking Kipper to clarify that particular card. So let's take a look at the card that I've chosen. Okay, and so here we have abundance. So now if we take a look at maybe what the cause of the stress and fear is, abundance talks about financial increase, right? So, and I'm noticing, I'm going to hold this card up because I noticed something in the image. And Kipper, I tend to read more into the imagery than I do Lenormand. And so if you can see, we have a man who's holding lots of money, right? But if you notice, on the one side, one of the bags has a hole in it because change is coming out, right? So here we have the potential of, a change in our financial picture if I just read into the imagery, right? So maybe that's what the stress and fear is, right? For some people, there's going to be stress around changes in financial pictures, right? Which is understandable, right? Because again, if I go back to what I said, one of the things that I said at the beginning with gift and a long way was about an offer being presented down the road. Why? Because people are going to be facing adversity around money, right? And abundance usually represents a lot of something. And so as a result of that, there's going to be a lot of stress involved in that, right? And so the idea here with the one side, that's going to be offered to help minimize what I'm seeing here is the financial stress, right? Or financial adversities, right? People losing money. And especially maybe those who are in the stock market. I'm not a financial advisor or planner, but because the abundance card talks about wealth, then if I pair the two cards, this could be a wealthy woman, older woman. Remember, she's the one who's looking this way, right? So it could be those people who have money and maybe the fear. Remember, this was stress and fear, this bottom card, of losing their wealth, right? So for the working class or the working people, we have the challenge of being stressful about, losing the money that we have in terms of income, right? But for the wealthy people who are in the stock market, their fear is a different kind of fear, right? But it's all the same, right? Just different, what's the word I'm looking for? Different spectrums or different amounts, right? It's all the same fear. It's just that the amount of money involved may be different, maybe more on one end than the other, right? But it's all the same kind of concern. So that's what I'm seeing here. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and end this week's reading here. I'm James Himm Mitchell, and as I sign off, I'd like to thank you for sharing space here with me for this week's reading, and I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day in the light of what's going on. I'm hoping that you're able to make it the best day possible, and I'm hoping that you have a wonderful week again. Keeping in mind of what's going on, I hope it's the best week you can make it possibly. And until we get together again, take care.